Welcome back, guys, to the Great Ace Attorney 2 Resolve, where last episode, after the Crystal Tower glass shard we found on the Waxwork allowed us to get 2 more jurors on side, swinging us back to a not guilty verdict, a recess was called with the prosecution wishing to bring Madame Tuspels to the Old Bailey to testify. After an uncomfortable meeting with Courtney Sive in the interim after we accused her, with our defendant feeling lost in the proceedings with things barely involving our professor anymore, talk turned back to the serial killing professor whose waxwork supposedly shows his true appearance even with it having been hidden from the public, as we now cross-examine Tuspels' first testimony. An impression of the visage was taken directly from the corpse in accordance with Tuspels' family principles.
Hold it!
Is that true of every waxwork in your museum then? It is, assuming the subject is dead, of course. Live subjects have to cooperate in a similar way. I have letters from imprisoned criminals all the time, you know. What sort of letters? When my time comes, please make a waxwork of me. Commissar? No. My museum is famous, monsieur. To be made into a waxwork is an honor. And for some criminals, a symbol of status even. Because nothing says hardened criminal better than wax. And it is thanks to one killer in particular that my museum has gained such popularity in London. I refer to the star of the special exhibit, of course, the Professor, whose form you claim to have captured by taking an impression from the actual corpse. There are no exceptions to the principles of Tuspels. I enlisted the aid of the gravedigger and created a mold for the head in the cemetery just before the interment.
Hold it!
Surely that's illegal, isn't it? It would seem the proprietress of this repository of novelties was blinded by monetary greed. It had nothing to do with money. The man is part of London's criminal history. That is why I had to sculpt him, to record this history. It is the raison d'etre of the Tuspels Museum. But if the man was convicted in a closed court and sent for immediate execution, then surely nobody but the members of the judiciary present know the killer's true identity. I assure you, behind that mask is hidden the true face of the Professor.
Do you realize what you're saying?
The Professor's identity is a national secret. I understand. And now that the truth about the special exhibit has been revealed, it must perhaps close.
Of course it will. As will your entire museum if you don't tread very carefully, madame.
That could be another interesting chapter in the history of my family, I think. Don't you? So 10 years ago, on the night of the Professor's execution, you took a wax impression of his face from the corpse. Oui, exactement. I hid myself until he gave me a signal. I was there for a very long time that night. Also, it's really not about the money when she's basically hid the face the entire time, but still.
Hold it!
You were there longer than you expected to be. I had some difficulties in capturing the subject's form correctly. As I removed the mask, the mouth of the cadaver fell open, and I had some problems with the chin. Dare I ask? The man had been dead for a short while already, you see. His muscles were relaxing and consequently his chin would not align itself correctly. Oh dear, what a horrible thought. Under normal circumstances, I would have an assistant with me. However, that night I was alone, and as a consequence, I missed my preferred window of time.
What do you mean?
When I take the impression of the visage of a cadaver, I always wait until 3 hours after death.
Why 3 hours? Is that amount of time significant?
Hey, it's Rigor Mortis. It is because of Rigor Mortis.
A Wriggly Mortis?
It's the name given to a phenomenon that occurs in recently deceased bodies. As a rule, 3 hours post-death, the muscles in the body begin to stiffen. By approximately 10 hours post-death, the entire body is completely rigid and inflexible. And then, from that point on, the muscles slowly start to revert to their relaxed state. The effect is often used to estimate the time of death when a body is discovered.
Well, that was an education, if a slightly scary one.
As the Mademoiselle says, Rigor Mortis commences 3 hours after death and it starts in the jaw.
I see. So that's why you wait.
For that time, the mouth falls open, and it is very difficult to do my work.
It's getting hard for me to do my work with all the talk of corpses. I wonder about that information the court's just heard from Madame Tuspels. Oh. I guess it's probably significant. After all, this would be either very lately dead or very recently dead. Right? Midnight 17th of June. Did we get a time frame of anything thus far? Did I miss that? The information about Rigor Mortis that you just shared with us, would you mind including it in your formal testimony? I believe it could be significant, you see.
Of course, I do not mind at all. I can't help feeling that after this latest topic, the atmosphere in the courtroom has become extremely grave.
This is no time for jokes, Miss Susato. I'll never get your name right because of this. Madame, kindly amend your testimony as discussed.
Well, sir. Bien. It took me a very long time because it was before the onset of Rigor Mortis.
Hold it!
Rigor Mortis being the phenomenon you described whereby the corpse becomes stiff after death. I think you said that it starts at the jaw about 3 hours post-death, is that right? Oui, c'est ça. Of course, the exact duration depends a little on the season. I didn't realize a waxwork artisan would be so well versed in the subject. No, that is only elementary knowledge in the field of legal medicine.
Well, I had no idea about it, but maybe I won't admit to my ignorance about forensic science.
I could ask my father to give you a very simple primer if you like.
He does need it. I think corpses should be your domain. I'm not good with them.
Oh dear, I'll do my very best. As dawn approached, I was very worried that I could be discovered.
Time frame. Dawn. Somewhere as early as 5-ish, maybe. You know, could be as late as 9. Ish, yeah. Time frame. Hold it! You say that dawn was approaching. What was the time of day then, approximately? Hey, getting to the right question.
Well, I could not say. When I left the cemetery with my utensils and wax, the morning light was becoming visible.
The execution took place on 17th of June, which had the earliest sunrise of that year. Indeed it did. First light would have been around 4:40 in the morning. Wasn't far off. That really is early.
Fact is, I had very little time, so I finished my work in a half hour. It was necessary to complete the impression and bury the body before daybreak, of course. If somebody had discovered me there, it would have been a catastrophe, so I had to hurry.
Is it me, or does Mr. Sholmes seem to be taking shape more quickly now, too? You certainly appear to go to extraordinary lengths for your work, madame. I wonder, is what she just said particularly significant? Yeah, obviously it is. Madame, those details about how long it took you to complete the sculpture and the early sunrise, could you include them in your testimony? I believe they may be significant.
Of course, if you would like me to. You're quite right, Mrs. Naruhodo. It is intriguing. A sunrise at 4 in the morning would be absolutely unimaginable at home, wouldn't it?
That's not quite what I meant by significant. Kindly amend your formal testimony then, madame.
With pleasure, my lord. I hurried to finish my work in the half hour before sunrise, and I left as soon as the corpse was interred.
Right. Press, but I'm guessing this is exactly where I want to, present, and I obviously very much want to present the autopsy report. Hold it! Let's press first. Did you have reason to believe you might be discovered once the sun came up or something?
I had paid the gravedigger money to keep my little secret, of course. But with the morning light, I knew that the warden from the prison would commence his patrol of the area.
Could you have just paid off the warden too, then?
I had already paid the gravedigger, as I said. You cannot buy the silence of everyone, or the secret is no longer a secret.
The sunrise was at 4:40 a.m. that day, which means that it would have been around 4 when you began your sculpting work.
Oui, that must be correct. That would be when the gravedigger gave me the signal to come out of hiding.
So, that's all I have to go on.
What's your feeling, Mr. Naruhodo?
For some reason, Dr. Scythe went along with Drebber's plan. Now, if that's really true, then the Professor is the only other thing we know of that links the pair of them. So I feel sure that Waxwork must be a clue to this mystery somehow.
In that case, we must use this cross-examination to uncover exactly what it means. Otherwise, the jurors are sure to revert their leanings, and the trial will be over.
I agree, but interestingly, uncovering what the Professor has to do with all of this means more to Lord Van Zieks than anyone. That's the impression I'm getting anyway.
Yes, as do I.
After all, he has a profound connection to the Professor as well.
The special exhibit in the House of Horrors is based on a rumour that shocked society in London, so really, I'm just skipping through.
Okay. I hurried to finish my work a half hour before sunrise, and I left as soon as the corpse was interred. Half hour before sunrise is after the autopsy report. The death was confirmed at midnight, so we're looking an hour later than Rigor Mortis should have set in. And there's still Rigor Mortis hadn't set in, but the death was at midnight. Okay.
Objection!
Wait, I'm wrong? That last statement would seem to be at odds somehow with the evidence. It is your task, counsel, to explain the somehows of the court, not the other way around. What? It just seems to jar, though, don't you think? What I think is that this whole exchange has been extremely jarring, yes. Perhaps I need to reconsider this. I presented the right one, right? Killer's autopsy report. It's about the timing. Okay, if it's not that one then, which is timing. I guess this one's a bit more explaining. That's the exact time, so we could have... Surely both of this should apply. But I'm guessing it must be this statement instead. It took me a very long time because it was before the onset of Rigor Mortis, but Rigor Mortis should have set in. That's what I was trying to literally say by going like half hour before sunrise, which was like, you know, 4:10, which is the exact same thing. But of course, Ace Attorney sometimes wants you to present to an incredibly specific thing, even though surely something could work on multiple things. The first time we've been really got by the Ace Attorney ways during this playthrough.
Objection!
It is. Madame Tuspels. I have here an autopsy report that was filed 10 years ago now. It confirms the death of the Professor following his execution at the gallows.
And is that a problem?
I believe it is, because your testimony and a particular detail in the report completely contradict one another.
Quo?
I don't know how to pronounce it. Are you going to explain yourself, my Nipponese friend? According to her testimony, Madame Tuspels was creating her wax impression just before dawn, and at that time, Rigor Mortis had not yet set in. Am I correct so far, Madame?
You are, yes.
As I said, the stiffening of the jaw is the first sign of Rigor Mortis, 2 to 3 hours after death. But the man's chin was limp, so he cannot have been dead for a long time. But on the other hand, if you look at Dr. Scythe's reports, it quite clearly states the following. Death by hanging confirmed at midnight, 17th of June. No. If the Professor indeed died at midnight that day, then by the time you were sculpting his face, Rigor Mortis would already have set in.
Oui, yes, you are right. The chin, it would have been completely stiff. In other words, this report is wrong.
Objection!
No coroner makes mistakes when recording the time of death. The very idea is absurd. In that case, there's only one possible conclusion. The execution didn't actually take place at the stated time. Impossible!
Order! Order! Counsel, this is beyond folly. Not only do you indict the author of the report, Dr. Seif, but you also implicate members of staff at Berkeley Prison where the execution took place. By heck! Extraordinary! Not on my day!
Objection!
My learned friend appears to have overlooked one very crucial fact. What fact? The professor died that night, without question. He did. Of course he did. I moved the man's limp jaw with my own hands. There was no... Yes, the professor died that night. But what if he didn't die at the gallows? Didn't die at... Are you insane? What exactly are you suggesting did happen in that case? It's almost impossible to believe, but it would explain the link between Dr. Seif, the professor, and that one other person of interest. I have evidence that will explain exactly what I'm suggesting happened that night.
Hey, Counsel, present the evidence at once. The evidence that allegedly explains what really happened on the night of the professor's execution.
Think. Right, I'm pretty confident of this time. It's going to be this article because this is what really happened. He opened the grave up on his own, which is bizarre enough, to be perfectly honest. No coffin, nothing like that. It almost seemed like there was deliberately a way for him to escape, a way to get out. And who was there but Enoch Drebber and Odie Asman, linking everyone to the current stuff.
Take that!
What happened that night is written very plainly in this newspaper article. Executed criminal returns in the dead of night a local cemetery. You're suggesting it was a corpse coming back from the dead now? Well, if this article is to be believed, yes. The professor, assumed dead following his execution, emerged from his grave and was killed again.
Objection!
Don't be a fool. That's simply a rumor published by the gutter press. Can you be certain of that? Are you serious? The point is, as the article says, there was a witness to what happened.
My word! Yes, indeed.
Mais what? Oui. The young man who stole into the cemetery by chance that night.
Objection!
Chance. Of course there was a witness. The story didn't write itself, but obviously the man made it all up.
And in any case, this was 10 years ago now. There will surely be no hope of finding him.
Objection!
On the contrary, my lord, we all know this witness well.
What? Are you suggesting, Counsel, that you've identified the person in question? That you know who claims to have seen these utterly incredible events take place?
Yes, my lord. In fact, you could say that he's right here before my very eyes.
You will substantiate your latest claim now then, Counsel. Who is the alleged witness of this staggering scene from the cemetery 10 years ago?
Can I just point at the name?
Take that!
The man in question is Mr. Enoch Drebber.
Drebber? The previous witness?
The special exhibit in the House of Horrors at Madame Tuspel's Museum of Waxwork recreates that decade-old scene in great detail. The condemned criminal emerging from the grave, and beside the tomb, a young man with a lantern stumbling upon the terrifying sight. And that young man is a 10-year younger Mr. Enoch Drebber.
Order! 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 Surely not, Counsel.
Drebber was there, in Lowgate Cemetery. What is all this talk about Mr. Drebber? Is the name significant? Of course, Madame Tuspels doesn't know, does she? Yes, it's extremely significant, Madame. Your situation as well, in fact. What situation? The theft of the Professor Waxwork from your museum some days ago was perpetrated by the very same man. No! But that would mean...
Madame to spells. It would appear you know the name Enoch Drebber.
Oui, yes, I know it. But from long ago in the past. What? Oh my!
Good gracious! Explain yourself. Tell us everything you know.
Yes, of course. The story of the young man and the terrible sight he witnessed in the cemetery 10 years ago was published in every single newspaper in London and throughout Great Britain. However, in all of the articles, the witness was simply described as a certain young man. No details were published about his identity. His name was never revealed. That is, apart from in one newspaper. The Daily Circus. It is the paper from which comes the article I have already shown the court. You're saying that his full name was only publicized in that article?
Goodness me! Yes, here it is. The university student who experienced this shocking event is Mr. Enoch Drebber, a disciple of science at the University of London and a resident of its student dorms.
Unbelievable! When I read the article, I went to meet with the man. His discovery of the condemned criminal coming back to life in the cemetery in the dead of night would make a perfect exhibit for my House of Horrors, whether it was the truth or not.
I see. So you went to meet Mr. Drebber in order to sculpt a waxwork of the man, did you?
Exactement. He was studying science at the University of London in those days. He was just a poor student. I paid him £5 to model for the waxwork. And since that time, it has been in my museum to recreate the scene of terror from the cemetery.
So, 10 years ago, a young man appealed to the public about an extraordinary event he'd witnessed.
A criminal who had been put to death, re-emerging from his grave in the middle of the night. But the public treated his claim as nothing more than an amusing anecdote that was soon forgotten.
10 years later, the same man steals a waxwork model of the executed criminal, ostensibly to use as a body double for the victim in the case we're discussing here today. Even though the waxwork's build is a poor match for the victim, and its face is obscured by a mask.
So the question is, why would the man do such a thing?
Leverage. Which brings us to 3 days ago, when the birdcage crashed into the Crystal Tower. If the birdcage had in fact contained not the body of Mr. Asman, but that same waxwork, the coroner from Scotland Yard who investigated Dr. Sive would have noticed immediately. And yet, she submitted this autopsy report for the victim, which the court has seen earlier. Why? Because the waxwork was that of the professor. Is that what you're saying? Dr. Sive put a name to a document confirming the death of a condemned criminal who was still alive. A criminal whose apparent resurrection was witnessed by Mr. Drebber. But that misconduct was a deadly secret the coroner would do anything to protect. Which is precisely why Mr. Drebber used that particular waxwork as the body double. Ah! My lord, this court must summon Dr. Sive to the stand. The defense is determined to find out exactly how the coroner and Mr. Drebber are connected. But according to the missive I received this morning through the prosecutor's office, Dr. Sive is unable to participate in these proceedings. Is that not the case?
She told us so herself, didn't she? Lord Van Zeeks won't be summoning me as a witness. Lord Strongheart has forbidden it.
Lord Strongheart?
The Pandora's box you were warned about is the Professor case. But please don't make the mistake of thinking you'll get any information about it out of me. Something happened on the night of that killer's execution 10 years ago. And surely nobody would want to get to the bottom of that more than Lord Van Zeeks. The prosecution calls for the instructions in that missive to be scrapped.
But Lord Van Zeeks, the missive was issued from the Lord Chief Justice's office.
Objection!
The assigned prosecutor has the final say on policy in any particular trial. In other words, me. Yes! Let Enoch Drebber and Dr. Scythe both take the stand together.
Order! 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 Very well. I will uphold your request. Bailiff, send a subpoena with immediate effect, addressed to Dr. Scythe of the Forensic Investigation Team. The woman is compelled to attend on Her Majesty's orders.
All right then. Enoch Drebber and Dr. Scythe. If they weren't colluding with one another, this crime could never have been committed. I'm just a stone's throw away. I can feel it. Truth behind all of this is about to come out. Thank you for your attendance at such short notice, Dr. Scythe. I'm disappointed in you, Lord Van Zeeks. You've completely betrayed the agreed policy of both Scotland Yard and the prosecutor's office. Betrayal is not in my nature, as long as the truth isn't compromised. If it is, and there's even a hint of wrongdoing, then no matter whom it concerns or disgruntles, I will pursue the matter to the bitter end, as would any prosecutor worth his salt. Mr. Drebber, you took the victim's life by means of a machine that you constructed in your workshop. And Dr. Scythe, as the investigating coroner, you were the first on the scene to examine the victim's body. It is the belief of the defense that you collaborated with each other and were both complicit in this crime. And where's your evidence? At present, we have no definitive evidence, but we do have a very significant clue. What are you talking about? I'm talking, of course, about the Waxwork. This model of the killer known as the Professor was sentenced to death 10 years ago. You don't need to tell me. I witnessed the man's execution with my own eyes and officially pronounced him dead. That remains to be seen. Is that so? According to newspaper reports from the time, on the night following his execution, the killer came back to life. Don't waste my time. And the sole witness to that mysterious event was you, Mr. Drebber, wasn't it? If what you saw in the graveyard that night 10 years ago wasn't some chilling fiction, but reality, it would make you privy to a very great secret of Dr. Scythe's. A secret so profound it could compel the coroner to agree to collaborate in your evil scheme, in fact. Mr. Drebber, tell the court. Tell everyone the truth of what you saw that night in Lowgate Cemetery. So he was the student who saw it. You can see the resemblance actually, can't you? With the man in Madame Tussauds, I mean. Surely he's not going to claim that's really what he saw, especially not after all these years. He was a research student at the University of London, was he? And a bit too clever for his own good, if you ask me. Coo-coo-coo. Coo-coo-coo. What an interesting twist. When at the time, not one person would take me seriously. Yet now here we are 10 years later, and suddenly my story matters, and in a court of law too. Very well then, if everyone so wishes. Let's be frank, I'll tell you the truth of what happened that night, for what it's worth.
So, Mr. Drebber, your testimony, please, about the events of that night 10 years ago. You will tell the court exactly what you stumbled across in Lowgate Cemetery.
Yes, of course. As you wish. And so we come to a new testimony in the cemetery 10 years earlier, but you'll have to wait another day, another episode, for we end this one of the Great Ace Attorney 2 Resolve right here, right now. Everyone is assembled. We really want to be assembled. There's a Madame Tuspells as well, but maybe she has something to chip in with. You never know what is going to come. 3 people on the stand together. I'll see you next time as we delve into this, cross-examine and more. Bye-bye.